Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from our Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news, and first we check out our headlines. Brazil officially surpassed 50,000 coronavirus deaths with more than 1 million total cases across the country. Libya's UN-backed Government of National Accord will not participate in the conflict resolution talks organized by the Arab League. Pope Francis calls all nations to guarantee the safety of refugees amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. We begin with our news. You stay with us. We begin with our news. Brazil officially surpassed 50,000 coronavirus deaths on Sunday, with more than 1 million total cases across the country. Brazil's the world's second COVID-19 hotspot following the United States has now a total of 1,085,038 confirmed cases and 50,617 deaths. But experts have continued to warn that the real numbers are likely a lot higher due to a lack of testing. And thousands of protesters in several Brazilian states are demanding the resignation of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro. As part of ongoing mobilizations against the government and in rejection of racism, social organizations and health workers' unions have continued to raise their voices against what they say is a lacking response to the pandemic. Citizens widely agree that Bolsonaro has not done much to fight the emergency, as Brazil currently stands as the second country most affected by COVID-19, surpassing 1 million cases.
What is real is that we did not want to be in this situation. We wanted to stay home, caring for our health, for our families, but we cannot just remain silent. Silence is useless as the government attacks our democracy, attacks our rights. We are out there to defend freedom, justice, democracy, but above all, the life of our people.
Venezuelan Vice President of Communications, Jorge Rodriguez, provided an update on the number of new COVID-19 cases registered in the country.
Over the past 24 hours, we have reported 44 positive cases due to community transmission. 20 of these are in the state of Zulia. In a popular market, there will remain shut down. Another 9 come from the capital district, 6 in Sparta state, 5 in Bolívar state, 2 in Falcon state, and 1 in the states of Falcon and Miranda each. We have also detected 84 cases coming from abroad, 54 of which came from Colombia, 15 from Brazil, 1 from Mexico, and 14 are patients who had contact with international travelers entering Venezuela. With this, we have gone up to 3,918 total cases, of which 835 have recovered, 2,843 are in hospitals, 547 in diagnostic centers, 15 in private clinics, and 33 have died.
And this Monday, Guyana's Court of Appeal is set to rule on the legal challenge seeking to prevent the Elections Commission, GCOM, from using the results of the recount from the March 2nd elections to make a final decision. The announcement was made by the president of the court, panel Justice John Gregory. Celine David, a private citizen and government supporter, filed a lawsuit calling on GCOM to disclose whether the general and regional elections were fair and credible before announcing the results. However, GCOM says only the High Court has jurisdiction to determine the validity and credibility of the polls. And Argentina's coronavirus deaths crossed 1,000 on Sunday, and infection spiked to over 40,000 as cases in Latin America surged past the 2 million mark.
1,000 people have died so far as a result of the pandemic in our country. The mortality rate has fallen to 2.4% of the total number of confirmed cases, and Argentina's death rate is 21.9 cases per million residents. There are 41,204 total confirmed cases in our country since the beginning of the pandemic. 90.8 cases per 100,000 residents is the incident rate.
And tensions continue in Bolivia as the de facto regime attempts to once again delay the general elections. Janine Áñez has not yet enacted the law, which will set September 6 as the date for the elections. We have more details on the following story sent by our correspondent, Freddy Morales.
The de facto government's parliamentary representation was already agreed upon elections set for September 6th by the Electoral Court and presidential candidates to be delayed once more and not just for 2 months.
If it is necessary to go over 1, 2 months or for whatever time is necessary, we need to do it. Because what comes first, and we ask Bolivians, we are thinking about electoral carnival. We are thinking about politics. We are thinking about a political campaign, or are we putting health first?
In the meantime, the de facto government is publicly preparing to repress social movements which are demanding respect for the date of the elections. On the anniversary of the Bolivian police, they were instructed to act against the favorite party according to the polls, the movement towards socialism.
Trabajando para frenar la violencia de los violentos.
We are working to stop violence of violent actors and working to stop crime, and what is happening is that many violent people are taking advantage of the quarantine, are reorganizing politically and return with a stick in hand. An example is that Evoism is returning to divide with violence.
Para dividir con violencia.
The Legislative Assembly has already long approved the law elaborated by the Electoral Court to hold elections in September, and together with the country is waiting to see if the government will reject it, as it previously did with a similar law.
The President has the power to observe a law, and if they observe within this period, it will have to return to the plurinational assembly so that they can accept or reject the observations. If they are rejected, ipso facto, the Constitution gives an attribution to the Senate President to enact it as law.
The Senate President Eva Copa announced that if the executive power decides not to enact the law, Copa herself will fulfill her duty.
I'm not going to escape from my functions, which have been given to me as President of the Assembly. It's unfortunate that Mrs. Áñez and her government are circumventing, looking for excuses to not enact the law.
Coronavirus cases are being augmented in order to oppose the elections, and now Áñez says that a scientific report of infection screenings is required. The Electoral Court responded that the September 6th date was chosen on the basis of an official report by the health authorities' Janine Áñez's own de facto government.
From both We are back with our news. Libya's UN-backed Government of National Accord says it will boycott conflict resolution talks to be held by the Arab League foreign ministers on Tuesday. Foreign Minister Mohammad Taher Siala said the Government of National Accord will not participate because it was not consulted prior to the setting up of the meeting. The talks, to be held via video conference, was called by Egypt, a key supporter of the Tripoli government arch-rival General Khalifa Haftar. The two sides have been involved in violent conflict since last year when Haftar launched an offensive to wrestle control of Tripoli. Meanwhile, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has threatened to send soldiers into Libya if Turkish-backed GNA Government of National Accord forces attack Haftar's troops in the strategic cities of Sirte and Jufra. Sisi says Egypt has a legitimate right to intervene in Libya and order the military to be ready for deployment outside the country. Turkey's support for the Government of National Accord has reversed a 14-month assault on Tripoli by forces loyal to Haftar, backed by United Arab Emirates and Egypt. A 525-bed field hospital is being built by the Akik institution in Iraq at the Baghdad International Fair Exhibition Center. As hospitals overflow with patients, the Iraqi government announced that the temporary field hospitals will open throughout the capital. Iraq's health system was already battered by years of conflict as well as poor infrastructure and lack of funds. Reports state that in Iraq, current figures of COVID-19 infections are 30,868 with 1,100 deaths. Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas and Jordan Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi have held talks to discuss Israel's plans to annex large parts of the West Bank. Safadi, who arrived in Ramallah on Friday, told members of the media that he delivered a letter from the Jordan king on the continued coordination between both countries. He reaffirmed Jordan's rejection of any plan that seeks to grab Palestinian territory. The annexation plan is part of the U.S. President Donald Trump's so-called Middle East peace plan, which has been widely condemned across the region and the world. Meanwhile, the Central Committee of the Fatah Liberation Movement has called on Palestinians to launch peaceful popular resistance against the Israeli annexation plan.
Annexation means ending our cause. On the other hand, we stress that an independent Palestinian state is a necessary element in the conflict's equation, in achieving regional stability and world peace to resolve our conflict on the basis of the international legitimate decisions. We adhere to international legitimacy. We don't see bloody violence as serving our case at this stage. We struggle in a national, regional, and international space. If we maintain this confrontation between what this occupation is doing and the interests and values of the world, we believe that this is a success. Nobody is allowed to tell us that Netanyahu and his coalition were elected. Hitler was elected. Mussolini was also elected. And let's go back into history and read it well. Now, if he goes on with the annexation, I tell you, we will not raise a white flag. We will not die alone. We will not suffer alone. And we will not allow the settlers, bullying, and the symbols of the occupation to continue.
And the government of Uganda has highlighted a critical situation for refugees in the country caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Uganda provides shelter to about 1.4 million refugees and asylum seekers, as they will now receive economical aid of $257 million thanks to the refugee programs. On Saturday, in the framework of the Global Refugee Day, the World Bank confirmed that the aid for Uganda. According to the WFP, the country has been at risk of a starvation of food supplies and estimated to run out soon. In South Africa, the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, the EFF, has rejected plans by the South African Broadcasting Corporation to retrench 600 workers. A statement by the party said there was no justification for laying off workers at a time when the state broadcaster is experiencing notable financial stability and audience growth. The party has appealed to workers' unions to reject what it described as ridiculous and narrow reasoning that seeks to thrive at the expense of the livelihoods of workers. Moving on, in the United States, the death toll of COVID-19 continues to rise. As of Sunday, authorities reported close to 120,000 deaths. According to Johns Hopkins University, the death toll stands at 119,959 as of Sunday. There has also been projections that the nation will face an exponential rise in coronavirus cases this week in the states of Texas, Florida, and Arizona. Also in the United States, President Donald Trump's first campaign rally since the start of the pandemic was in Tulsa this weekend in Oklahoma and was solid due to the abundance of empty seats. Those who braved the risk of COVID-19 infection were met by what many called a rambling speech by Trump that was criticized for saying nothing of substance on the pandemic or racial tensions that have recently boiled over. The local fire department announced around 6,200 people were present, but campaign officials claim at least 12,000. Meanwhile, racial tensions are still rising in the nation following the ongoing police killings of African-American citizens. Supporters of the U.S. president face off with Black Lives Matter protesters faced outside a venue in Tulsa, Oklahoma after the rally. Police used pepper spray to disperse protesters who temporarily blocked a police convoy.
My family was Irish. They came over from Ireland. Do you think that they owned slaves? Do you think that they benefited all the way up from Ellis Island?
But you and I have benefited from the system that's in place. It's easier to get loans. It's easier to get a house. We don't get treated the same in the store as the people of color. We don't.
Time for another break. Remember, you can find this and more on our website, closerenglish.net. There you can read more information and follow the latest numbers related to COVID-19. We are back with our news. Pope Francis made a call to all nations this Sunday to guarantee the safety of refugees due to the pandemic.
The coronavirus crisis has highlighted the need to ensure the necessary protection for refugees too, in order to guarantee their dignity and safety. I invite you to join me in praying for a renewed and effective commitment on part of us all to the effective protection of every human being, especially those who have been forced to flee as a result of situations of grave danger to them or their families.
Pope Francis also spoke about the drop in pollution during the time people have complied with social distancing measures.
The lockdown has reduced pollution and revealed once more the beauty of so many places free from traffic and noise. Now, with the resumption of activities, we should all be more responsible for looking after the common home. I appreciate the many grassroots initiatives that are emerging in this regard all over the world.
And an Italian migrant rescue ship has brought dozens of migrants to safety in the first such arrival since the coronavirus pandemic eased. The Mare Ionio ship with 67 refugees on board and its arrival in Sicily were hailed by human rights organizations who noted the usual speed with which the government assigned the Mediterranean charity group aboard. The human rights organization Mediterranean, who led the effort, said the migrants had been without drinking water for 2 days. The group called for a port of safety to be extended to the German Sea with watch. 3 vessels which took on board around 100 people off the coast of Libya earlier in the week. Germany's coronavirus infections rate jumped to a rate of 2.88 on Sunday, which shows the virus is rising above the level needed to contain it over the long term. This could mean renewed restriction in Europe's largest economy, a blow to a country that so far had widely been seen as successful in curbing the pandemic. Chancellor Angela Merkel had favored maintaining lockdown measures for longer, but gradually eased restrictions in recent weeks following pressure from regional politicians to protect the economy. Germany so far has 191,272 COVID-19 cases and 8,895 deaths. Spain has lifted the state of emergency that had been in place for more than 3 months since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. The country has reopened its borders to visitors from most of Europe and is allowing British tourists entry without having to undergo a quarantine period. But social distancing rules remain in place as people have to stay 1.5 meters apart in public and wear masks inside shops and public transport. The state of emergency was declared on March 14 as the nation dealt with one of the worst COVID-19 outbreaks in the world.
The truth is that you are a bit scared. When you are walking down the street, you see groups of police officers, even though you haven't done anything. But it gives you a shock. I will finally see my family. I'm from Alicante, so it's great, really.
I'm a little bit nervous because it's the first time I travel since the COVID-19 appeared, and there's a lot of people, so I don't know. Since there have been new outbreaks, I think people won't be very convinced and relaxed when traveling. But well, I'm going to travel, and whatever happens, I hope I will be fine.
And France is also set to fully reopen its borders from midnight on Monday. All travelers arriving from within the European Union, United Kingdom and Schengen zones no longer need an international travel permit or to prove that their travel is essential. Azerbaijan has reinstated a tight coronavirus lockdown to contain a surge in infections that follow the easing of restrictions weeks ago. According to the country's Prime Minister Ali Asadov, citizens will now only be allowed to leave home once a day for a maximum of 2 hours after receiving permissions via text message from the authorities. The new measures will remain in force until August 1st in the capital Baku and several other major cities and provinces. Shopping malls, cafes, restaurants and hair salons were ordered to close as of Sunday, along with cultural and educational institutions. Azerbaijan has so far reported over 12,200 cases of the coronavirus and 148 deaths.
This decision is the right decision because it is good for human health. We must protect ourselves and our family around us.
Everybody knew that 2 days quarantine were meaningless. These 2 weeks quarantine will be more helpful for the healthcare system, and the job of our doctors will be easier.
And Serbians has gone to the polls in Europe's first parliamentary elections since emerging from the coronavirus lockdown. Early results show President Aleksandar Vučić on track to win 63% of the votes amid a boycott called by an opposition alliance and concerns about the novel coronavirus. The railing in second place was the Socialist Party with roughly 10% of the ballots, while third went to the right-wing Serbian Patriotic Alliance, getting 4% of the votes.
We expect Mr. Vučić, as the leader of the largest political party, to begin a process to shift power from the hands of the individuals to institutions of the system. I believe that this is the most important task to be done in the future.
I think it will be better, although I find that the outgoing government has done a good job. Now is the time to judge their work. I wish good luck to whoever is elected. Hopefully, it will be better for the people.
As we come to the end, we want to leave you with this impacting solar eclipse that was seen this Sunday as faithful observers gathered to offer prayers to the sun. Hundreds of Hindu gather offer prayers to the sun as they watch the sunset through a telescope as a solar halo projected around the moon. The eclipse, known as Ring of Fire, was seen in the natural spot. The phenomenon was also observed in other locations over a period of almost 4 hours along a narrow band from the West Africa to the Arabian Peninsula, India and Taiwan. With these images of hope in the middle of this pandemic, we come to the end. Thank you for watching.